So welcome to the fifth chapter of EAGALA Israel. We're here with Patti Mandrell, and we're going to have a chat about a little bit about the model, about how to be better with it.
Okay.
I think the first question I want to ask is regard to developing content, and even if we're going to take it a little bit step backwards, the difference between equine-assisted learning and equine-assisted psychotherapy. And then you develop some programs like the Merit That Last, the trauma program that it's...
And the champions,
Yes.
those okay. Well, let me start with equine-assisted psychotherapy versus learning. In EAGALA model, there is a licensed clinical practitioner still part of the team in both. You still have an equine specialist and a licensed mental health person. The biggest difference, your team may not look different. You may just have those two. Yet your goals are different. So the therapist role, and I was just sharing this earlier today with another therapist, the therapist role in psychotherapy is to be able to, hold that space for the mental health goals to be presented and kind of guide and protect that emotional safety perspective inside of it. In equine-assisted learning, the therapist's responsibility is to make sure therapy stays out of it. It's equally, because this model is powerful, we know. And just because we're going in an educational or a learning perspective doesn't mean it's not going to go there. It very often does. You've been even to EAGALA trainings and you see people start to, their stuff starts to stir and want to share that because it's a very emotionally safe environment. And so as the therapist, and the reason it's still in that team is to make sure that we can kind of hold boundaries to that, to protect the safety of the learning objectives and the group, that we're not taking deep dives into the deep end in this kind of learning setting. We're only going to be going to the middle ground, but we're not going to take a deep dive. Whereas if we're in mental health and the equine-assisted psychotherapy and they are wanting to deep dive, that's what we're there for. We're going to go down as deep as they want to go. So I think, those learning or their treatment goals or learning objectives are the main differences in that. So in psychotherapy, the goal is whatever treatment goals they have, whatever they're coming to treatment, we're going to focus in on that. Learning, we're going to have learning goals, and we're going to focus in on that, and keeping boundaries between the two. So they can look similar, and even curriculum development, you can use the same type of curriculum in a learning environment versus a psychotherapy environment. I think the biggest part is your informed consent needs to help the people know what the lines are. And we kind of, as a team, have to work to keep those lines and separation there. I think in this work, I think in any field, any even kind of learning, when you're talking education, because I was talking to a professor who is also a therapist, and I said, okay, so think about yourself in the classroom as a professor. You are a therapist, but you're there as a professor. Now, do you ever have students that come to you and want to talk to you about their own personal things? Yes, you do. And it can influence their participation in the class. However, as a therapist, you do not sit down and just start going through all of the stuff they bring to you when you're their professor. You might have a conversation of like, hey, I hear you. It sounds like that's something you really need to work on. I would encourage you to go get some help to work on that. And, right now, how can I support you right now so that you can participate in class right now? So I don't see this any different than that. Except we have horses and we have a team, and our equine specialist is equally helping us kind of navigate that. So that would be learning. And I could be the same professor that is a therapist, but when I'm in a group for therapy, how I'm going to handle that one participant that comes and wants to work on their stuff is going to be different because we're here for therapy. So I think that just because it's in the arena, maybe we feel like it has different, it should be handled different, not necessarily, but maybe it does add an element of challenge because it has a tendency to want to jump over into our stuff because it's so powerful. I think that's the power of the work. And so we just have to be really mindful of what role we're in. So when you go to your question about curriculum, I think we have to start with that mindset as well of like, okay, what are our goals? Are we working on treatment goals or are we working on learning goals? And we're going to start with that answer.
And that is different between programs. Let's say you're doing a program that is combining riding and trauma work and EAGALA. So it's changed between the programs, or
does our conversation change between programs? I think, again, the theme in what you're asking there is informed consent. If you have different programs, you're saying different equine therapy styles. So like riding horses, which in our part of the country, we use like path certification. I know in Israel, you guys may have different certifications for riding. But in that program, there are great benefits there. They are different benefits than EAGALA. But therapeutic riding, by definition, does not have a mental health person present. So if I go into that, then that kind of blurs those lines. So there's not a therapist in therapeutic riding. So if they're going to do therapeutic riding for a season and then transition to EAGALA work and start doing EAGALA work, we need to make that clear. Just like we need to make EAP and EAL clear. Anytime we are blending different styles or programs, my suggestion is the more clear with the boundaries you can be, the better. So you're speaking of like in our trauma-informed protocol that Refuge has designed, we have a phase that within their mental health treatment plan, when they come in, they meet with myself and our equine person and the veteran coordinator. Many of those are veterans. If they are, he's involved. And we assess kind of their needs. They go through the program. It is laid out on a piece of paper. They see all the phases. And phase 1 is riding. And the purpose of that is for body regulation, to help their body and their nervous system to kind of settle. It also has a benefit for especially veterans in our part, or here. I don't know if this transfers internationally or not, but in the US, many of our veterans have had experiences with mental health counseling and it has ended bad. So they come into the space with a therapist, this assessment, and they're kind of like, oof, they've already had a bad taste in their mouth about what has happened in their history with getting help, mental health help. And so another benefit is phase 1, there's not a therapist with them. So that takes some of that emotional pressure off. They are vet to vet. I have the veteran coordinator is their horse person. And so there's trust because they have a common denominator. They understand, they speak the same language. And so releasing some emotional pressure. So that's a piece of it too, and regulating their body. So we define, so in our informed consent, I'm telling them, this is why we have phase 1. so your body can start to regulate, help your anxiety go down, depression go down, help you sleep better, mood swings to start stabilizing, and it's vet to vet. There's no therapist in phase one. I tell them that up front. The entire program is under my supervision as a licensed practitioner, but I am not physically in the first phase with you. So then I tell them at 10 sessions, I'll come in and reassess, and we can talk about how it's going. And then if they need up to 20 sessions, they can have up to 20. At the end of 20, they're going to transition to phase two. Phase two is the EAGALA model. And so we will explain to them that's when the therapist will join the team. It's a whole different approach. You're not riding a horse. You're on the ground with horses. You will have your equine specialist with you as well. And that is when they get to start problem solving and finding solutions to life challenges, whatever those are. And then in that program, after they've done 10 sessions, I reassess. If they need up to 20, they can have that. After 20, they will transition to phase three. Phase three is traditional counseling approach, and we use EMDR, the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, very trauma-informed technique. And it is traditional sit-down talk therapy, no horses, phase three. So it is, we tell them this all up front. And again, 10 sessions, reassess if they need up to 20. And I am the one reassessing them in every phase. I may not be the therapist in phase two, and I may not be the therapist in phase three, but I am still that consistent supervisory mental health person that's going to transition with them checkpoints and check in on them. The only way that works is because there's clarity. There is checkpoints and informed consent to reduce confusion. Because believe me, years ago, I tried thinking, there's benefits to the riding, and we offered therapeutic riding. And maybe they would do this for a couple of weeks, and then we'd send them over to riding, and then they'd come back. Confusion, there was less movement forward because they were more confused about, wait, I don't understand why these horse people will tell me what to do over here when I'm riding and be real clear about you need to do this, you need to do that. And then we go to EAGALA and they won't tell me anything. And it just started adding frustration, which was not our goal. And discovered that, okay, this is creating more harm than good, and it's not working. So then it was like, okay, we can't do them simultaneously. You could do one for a season and then go to the other one, or start with EAP and transition to therapeutic riding. We've kind of tested back and forth to see, but doing them at the same time seemed to be confusing.
So I'm taking few major themes from it. First of all is clarity, then even the suggestion that you are showing that it's going to be better. You kind of install it in the system of a person in a way.
Yeah. I think that's important. Really, it truly is a belief system that we do believe that they have the ability to get better. And we've seen people over and over and over. So it's not like I feel like I'm just saying it.
Believing, no.
Yeah, I know it. Now they have to want it, and I can't want it for them if they don't want it too. And sometimes that's the hardest part for them to kind of grab a hold of, wanting it as well for themselves, because they have to start believing it. But we do start with a belief system of like, this is going to help. This really has the possibility to help, if you're willing to put in the work.
And tell me a little bit about the program that you developed about marriage that lasts.
So for years, Randy and I taught a marriage preparation class at our church. And it was a curriculum that was developed by a team. We had a kind of a committee of couples that came together and brought some curriculum. And we had one of the lead pastors that was part of that, brought a bunch of material that was really helpful for couples. And put a curriculum together for the church. Because at the time, and this was 20, 25, 30 years ago, the church mandated that any pastor that married them, they had to go through this course before they could get married. And so this was putting together the course. And it was an 8-week course. And they came once a week for 8 weeks and talked about different topics that couples, needed to kind of talk through based on all of this material that we had brought together. And we taught it traditionally at the church for several years. Then we moved, and so we weren't teaching it at the church. We moved across the state and really missed helping couples, in their process of getting married and what that curriculum, we felt like you didn't have to just be engaged to get married for that stuff to be helpful. We started thinking, there's a lot of couples that are married that kind of going back to the basics is really helpful to help them keep moving forward. So after we moved, we decided to start implementing that same curriculum in the arena and add the horses and see what it'd be like to do the same thing that we were teaching in a classroom setting in the arena. So it was equine-assisted learning, and we began to use it after we had left Lubbock and more with married couples because that's just who we were around and had access to. And individually, we did a couple of groups, married couples. And probably my favorite one was we did veterans and their spouses, and we did a group. In that curriculum, we were able to take the same topics that they had talked about in the classroom and come up with some different activities. Each week they would focus on something different, like communication styles or family, like their family of origin. They focused on their family of origin. And then we would do an activity kind of related to the things they had uncovered about their family of origin. And we still used the workbook we had come up with through the church because it gave them some homework and they would do things like family of origin. They would do some work and draw out their family tree and identify some of the challenges that their family has passed along and some of the strengths that their family had passed along, coming to a place of deciding, okay, now we know kind of our history. What do we want from our family, and redefining kind of what they wanted their tree to look like from then on, and get them in the arena and doing that acting and finding the solutions for that, addressing some of those challenges together with other couples. And then they would kind of talk about it. And it was very effective. With our veteran group, we continued this even when we came back to Lubbock. After we had moved for a while, we came back, we continued doing it. And every week, well, on the first week of that group, the veterans and their spouses went out to the pasture. We had all the horses out in this big pasture, and they were to go find the horse that most represented their marriage and send them out in the pasture. And each couple came back with a horse. They'd halter the horse and bring it back to us. And then they would share with the group what it was about this horse that was kind of like their marriage. And then from that day forward, every week when they got there, we would give them a prompt of whatever we were going to focus on for the day. And like it could be finances or communication or their family of origin or conflict resolution. And they had to go get their marriage, take it for a walk, and talk about whatever that topic was, kind of what were the top things that they needed to address that day. And then they would come back and we would address that using the horses. So it was a very kind of unique way to integrate a curriculum that was already there and add horses to that. And so that's one thing I suggest to people. There's lots of great curriculums out there, even with education. Schools, our education systems have come up with curriculums to teach character and values and how to treat people, and I'm just thinking, even through the education system, those are some that stand out to me. You can take that curriculum and go, okay, how can we do this in the arena? And just add horses to it, and adapt it to being more hands-on rather than just something that they fill in the blank. I mean, maybe they still do have this journal, or if it's a curriculum that has thoughtful questions for them to think about, maybe they have that and they take that home and they're still doing that, but we're adding an element of doing to that, and the sticking power to that, their ability to retain it and remember it after being in the arena and doing it, goes way up.
If you do it, you lose it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to remember it. I can't remember who the statistic is, but I think we retain about 80% of what we do, versus, the numbers go down based on hearing, seeing. But once we put all that together and do it, it goes up to about 80%.
And I think it's very relevant to the model because it's very huge insight that come up. And then it's a very good question for people that are practicing EAGALA, how people can take it and use it for life to not lose it in a way. So one program was trauma, and then marriage that lasts, and the other is champions.
Champions is a curriculum that we developed 26 years ago. It was the very first curriculum we developed. And the reason we developed it, it's working with at-risk kids, is because there was a pattern of programs in our community. I was trying to build collaborations, and they kept coming back going, what's your curriculum? What's your curriculum? What's this going to look like? And my answer was, well, it's very open-ended, it's very client-led. And then they would shut the door because they were like, well, if you can't show me something of what you're going to do, then, they couldn't agree to pay for something that was that ambiguous or that vague. They needed something. And so it prompted me to go, okay, let's look at this. And we developed Champions, which is the mode behind that, or the mission is to be the best version of yourself you can be. So it's very general in regards to what they're working on, because we didn't want to address topics that might not impact your average kid, because I wanted at-risk kids to be that term used very loosely, because I feel like every kid can be at risk. There are some that are more at risk than others of having, life challenges, or because they have had life challenges. And so those were our target populations, but I didn't want to create something that limited to just them. Any kid that had some challenges could qualify. I wanted it to be pretty open in regards to who we were targeting. So we developed the curriculum with each week focusing on different characteristics of a champion. And I think, we talk about in our training the pause chart, and, building awareness, pre-awareness to awareness, and then understanding. And then that leads to, I call, self-empowerment, or our session experience for us. But for our clients, that's where the self-empowerment happens, because they can decide what they want to do with it. So they go from pre-awareness to awareness. So being able to identify some of those traits of what's going to help you be most successful in life. And we just broke down the word. We're like, let's leave it open-ended enough and kind of fun for kids. What are C words that describe a champion? So they're coming up with creative and calm and courageous and caring, you know, and just having them name as many characteristics as they can come up with. And then we transition that to, okay, now what does that look like? And what does it look like when it's not there? So that was my goal with the curriculum, creating it enough structure that it could be submitted to a program and say, here's the curriculum. Now, we don't operate with rigidity in that because we are client-led. And if the clients take it in a very different direction or a different words focused on than the examples we give in the curriculum, then we're going to go with that. And we're going to make those adjustments to meet that group's needs. But there is a curriculum that can be submitted, like to a school, for instance, that might want to sponsor one of these groups, or a funding source that is paying for that. We can say, here's the curriculum that we're operating under. And we've made many variations of that through the years. I don't remember what edition we're on with that manual, but several editions, because we continue to learn, we continue to grow even as facilitators. And so how I structure that has changed through the years a bit. But the general concept of what we're wanting to focus on, being the best version of yourself, hasn't changed. Now, that curriculum could be taken as a equine-assisted psychotherapy if we're going to dig into going into the deep end with clients, or we could make some adjustments and present it as equine-assisted learning and focus a little different with the kids in the group, you know, depending on our group. So depending on our needs for that group. For us, we lead it as a mental health psychotherapy group. And the kids, they do have mental health needs, and they're coming to work on those needs. And no group is ever the same in any of those. I mean, the curriculum we may have the parameters lined out, but it looks so different for every single one of them.
I think it's amazing to see that there is still structure and even like a measuring that they're giving a questionnaire in the start and then the same questionnaire in the end. And yet people that want to see structure will see the structure, and people that want to see the freedom to take whatever it's represent over there, it's very, very wild and open. And even like what I'm taking from there, there is a possibility to work about essences or about qualities if you are delivered it in ordinary, like when there is a structure to do it.
Talk more about what you mean there. Help me understand. I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying.
I'm saying that, first of all, it's coming from the growth mindset. You have a belief that says it's doable to build essences or power or quality or awareness around those kids.
Yes. So even with like our at-risk kids, you're saying
and
we
that's
have a
different
belief.
than even the school system, like the classic school system. We're gonna depose the knowledge that it's the right knowledge on those souls or people or children,
Right.
and there is a way that it has to be. And here, no, we're gonna lead them through a journey.
Yes.
That they will have opportunity, if it's a therapy or experience, if it's a learning thing based, and they will be able to discover where they are with where they want to be.
Yes, absolutely. And I do think that's a fundamental difference with this model, is that we do believe that people, children, adults alike, have the ability to find answers for themselves and to learn and grow when given the time and space to do so. And in that, I think there's a belief that my way of finding that is not the best way necessarily. It may work best for me, but it's not necessarily going to be best for you. And leaving space for everyone to find that answer differently, and that everybody's answer could be very different. You can have the exact same experience and everybody in there has a completely different experience with it or belief about it. And that's okay, because that's part of their journey. That is very different than like the traditional education system of like, no, we need to think about it this way. This is basically opposite of that. It is, we want to give you room to think about it however you want to think about it and decide where you want to end up with it.
And I think to wrap it up, the only question that I left with it is if there is a way to create an organized good. Let's say EAGALA Israel is a community in a way. If good could be organized, because when I think you, I think very organized person, but very, very value-driven at the same time. And you have an experience about organizing something that is at least aiming for good for the community of this place, or even at the church, like around you.
Right.
I'm asking what is necessary, or from the people, or from
To create that environment?
Yes, to create an environment of a growth mindset. Yes, let's say you are consulting for EAGALA Israeli as a separate organization, or as a...
Well, you named it, and that's the growth mindset, is that we have to all agree that no one has arrived and that we can all learn from each other and grow from each other. And it does take a different mindset to believe in collaboration rather than competition. Because as a community, that we're not like worried about competing with everybody. We're worried about helping each other get better. And where I stand on that is, I mean, even in our community, there is enough people to go around. We are not going to run out of people that have needs. And we are actually helping each other, or we're helping ourselves by helping each other. Because the better we are as a community, the better the more even reputation like EAGALA programs are going to have. Because if someone goes across town and has a really bad experience with EAGALA programming, then they're going to have a bad taste about EAGALA programming. It's just like with the mental health work with the veterans. You know, they come in with bad experiences and they're like, oh, so I can't act like that's not a reality. I have to operate under the fact that, okay, this is where they're at when they're starting, and I have to respect that and find a way to still help them see that it doesn't have to be that way forever. And that's a process. I mean, it's a process that takes me believing that and them being willing to believe that it could be different too. So I can only do my part in presenting things from a growth mindset and believing that, and being clear. It goes back to that informed consent thing too, being very clear about what we can and can't do. I mean, and other programs may ask us to do things that are kind of outside of what we do. And I have to be good at saying no too, to some things that just don't fit for us. Being true to our values, true to our mission, and I have to stay in that. And so as a big community, the more I stay focused on that and believe that and continue to include them, the more they start to shift their mindset about that as well. Now, I can say that very easily from veterans, because that's the process that happens day after day after day. They come in having a bad taste in their mouth. You know, the only thing that brings them in here rather than the regular office is, okay, wait, this is a little different. There's a horse. Maybe it's different. So they have a little hope of difference. But it's a journey. to get to that place of them believing in that growth mindset too. I transfer that to even like EAGALA Israel, EAGALA, the international EAGALA. It takes time, especially when there's been fragments in that or hurt, any experiences that have impacted that, which everybody's got their experiences and they're all different, just like our clients. But the more we can hold space, the more I can hold space for, it's okay for you to feel different. It's okay for you to have a bad experience. It doesn't mean that was me. And I have to filter out my apostrophe S out of that and separate, that's not me. And I can still hold space for that. The more healing can happen there. And the more consistently I'm able to do that, the more inclusive it becomes. People are drawn to that growth mindset. It brings people in, it helps heal, but I can't make anybody have it. I can just exhibit it myself and try to practice that in the work that I do, and it will come.
So it's a shared responsibility for each of every one of us to be in a process with our truth or with our values or with our mission, with our ability to say what we are or what we don't.
Yep.
Wow.
And to make a decision that maybe it's not. Maybe this is not the best place for me. And I mean, you can say that with clients too. There are some clients that will have a conversation and I will say, maybe this isn't the best fit, based on what they're needing. I don't have a belief that this is the fix-all for everyone. And I'll say that with EAGALA too. I don't think EAGALA is for everyone. And that's okay. And being able to allow people to choose something else is okay as well. So being able to have conversations with, and I'll switch into professionals, even as an EAGALA trainer, being able to have conversations about the pros and cons that people have experienced with different organizations. As from the growth mindset, I'm not going to devalue anybody's learning from a different modality or experience or say, oh no, mine is better than yours, because that doesn't help anybody. And that may not be true for them. I know what works for me, but again, just in this work, believing that people are going to have things that are going to be different, that are going to work for them. It's not mine to judge. It's mine to hold space that all of that can be, that we can still coexist and we can still possibly work together. But I've got boundaries on what works for me. And if it doesn't work, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm taking, it's kind of lateral thinking. It's not a hierarchy of what's right or wrong.
Right.
Laterally, what works or what is possible, and how can we expand on that?
Yeah. What would the world be like if we could all operate under that modality, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's why it feels so good when people come to experience that and they haven't been experiencing it, because we don't live in a world that thinks that way in general. And so it is a whole shift in thinking to be able to think that way rather than this way.
Thank you for being so open and generous with sharing all of that.
Well, thank you for asking the questions. Good questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.